Hi, my name's Nathan Klein, and I work here at Mako in the Creative Design Department. And today we're going to be working with our clay forms, which are basically plaster models of different vase forms. We have two right here. We also have our slump and hump molds, which if you want to check out the different sizes we have, you can go to makocolors.com and look at our catalog and find out what we have. To start off this demo, you're going to roll out a 1/4 inch thick slab, and then you're going to cut it into two strips that are 2 inches wide each, to go along the side of the clay form. So first, you take your one strip and just line it up along the side and push it into your mold. You want to have some overhang so that when you go in to make sure that this is flush against it, you can put some clay braces to hold the clay against the mold. So you just take a little piece of clay and push it on the bottom of the mold into this clay and on the top of the mold. And now we just ensure that the clay will not move away from the plaster form while it's drying. You do the same thing for the other side. And the great thing about these molds is that a novice hand builder can create a vase form pretty quickly and efficiently and not have any trouble in recreating what I'm doing here. So once you have the strips on the side of your mold, you want to put two braces in this indent right here to hold the clay from going out. And you also want to wait until this is set up to leather hard before you do the next step. Okay, so once these strips have been set up and they're leather hard, you can remove the two braces and remove the braces on the bottom and on the top. And then we're going to trim down the slabs. So you just want to take your fettling knife or whatever knife you have and just go flush along the plaster mold. Do it also on the top. And it's important to be flush here because if not, then we're just going to scoot back right here. So it's important to be flush on this mold right here because when you put the slab on the top and the bottom, you want it to line up equally. Okay, so for the next step, we're going to put a slab on top of our model. I like to use another mold that I already have to cut around, but if you don't have another mold, you can always use a paper template. The important thing is to make sure that you accommodate for that extra 1/4 inch thickness on both sides. So as you can see, I cut out my slab, and when I lay the model on top of it, there's a 1/4 inch thickness all the way around, but not on the top and the bottom. So next step is we're going to slip and score it on. So after I score it, I'm just going to put a slip on there. And I do it on both sides. That way it will be less prone to cracking when it fires. Okay, so once you slipped and scored it, just flip it over and lay it right on top of your model. And if it doesn't line up perfectly, that's fine. We'll flip it over and we'll trim off the excess. But you want it to line up as best as possible. And I like to just pinch around the sides just to make sure that it's completely attached. So you just take your model and flip it over. And you can see that there's some excess on the sides here. just completely fine. So you just take your fettling knife or any knife that you have and just go along the side, make sure it's nice and flush. And this is a low fire clay body that we're working with right now, but you can also use these models on mid-range clays and high fire clays. So once it's nice and flush and cut, I flip it back over and you can see a seam line on the sides here. I like to go along with a rib and just work it together just to make sure that it won't crack at all. And any rib that you have will be fine. I like one that's a little bit more flexible just so that it can get around those rounded edges. But if you have a stiffer rib, it's alright. So the next step is we're going to put a slab on the bottom of this. So I just take some of the excess slabs that I've already rolled out and one that just fits on the bottom. It doesn't have to fit perfectly. And then I'll just take my needle tool and go along the outsides of it so that you can get somewhat of an idea of the width of the bottom. Then I'll just cut that a little bit outside the lines, just so that when I put it up to the vase, I make sure that it's big enough to fit the bottom. Then I'm just going to score that. And then I'm going to slip it together. Make sure you apply the slip to both sides. And then just attach it like you did the top right here. Squeeze it together. And take your knife and just cut along to make sure it's nice and flush. And then just smooth it out with the rib. So once you have the bottom on there, you want to pick up the mold and the clay itself, and it might be stuck in there a little bit just because of the slip that we put around there, but just grab the edges of it and flip it over and wiggle it a little bit, and the mold should just pop right out. So once you have the model out of there, you can flip it over, and you can see the seam lines on the inside where you attach the slabs together. You can smooth those out with a sponge if you want, or you can even put a coil in there to reinforce the edges. If you smooth the outsides well enough, you won't have to worry about that, but it's always a great safety precaution to take. Okay, so the next step is we want to put that last slab on the back to complete the vase. So I have a slab cut here already, and then you have your vase form that you've already popped out. You just flip it over. Take my needle tool, which I don't know where it is right now. Oh, you can edit all this stuff. And then you just take your needle tool and you just cut around the edge of your vase. And you can go outside of the vase just a little bit if you want to, and then you can cut the excess off later like we have been doing with all the other sections, or you can just cut nice and flush along the vase if you feel comfortable enough. So once you have that cut, just remove that excess clay. Flip your piece over, and you're just going to slip and score it together. The most important thing about this step of the process is to make sure that that slab that you just cut is leather hard. Because if it's not leather hard, when you go to attach it to this, it's just going to slump in and cave in on itself. So it's just scored both edges. Now I'm going to slip it. Once you have both sides slipped and scored, just take this one side and flip it back over onto the slab that you just cut. And just make sure that it's lined up. Then I just push gently down onto it just to make sure that it's attached. Then I'll flip it over. Squeeze it together again. And I cut it flush along the form already, so I won't have to do any additional cutting. But I will take my rib and just go around the outside of it just to blend the edges together. If you are having problems doing this form and it is cracking, an important piece of advice I guess I would give is just to try to blend the two slabs together like they never were a separate piece. So once you smooth it out with the rib, I always just take a wet sponge and go around the edge of it just to really give it that nice polished finish. And you can flip it up. And go around the other edges also and just clean it up. You can add some clay to it if you want to fill in the cracks, or you can just smooth it over with your rib. Then again, I just go and clean up all the edges to give it a nice finish. So here we have our finished vase form. It's basic right now, but the nice thing about this form is you can add different things to it. You can add handles to it, different sprig molds, press tools. You can even put feet on the bottom of it. So the possibilities are really endless with this product once you have made the first form. If you have any other questions or concerns, please visit makocolors.com. Thanks for watching this video and hope to see you soon.